Okay, I'm sorry for the difficult start. I thought all the techie stuff had been arranged for before, but there is indeed a piece of the screen that is missing. The most important of my presentation is always on the right-hand side of the screen. But I'll talk you through like the 90% that you're going to have to miss. On the other hand, I like to walk around and I like to have my remote control, and I don't have it with me today. It's in Brussels, which was a bit too far to get. So, well, anyway, we do with what we have. I'll start with a couple of questions. I know in '98 there wasn't really smartphones as we know them today, but does anyone know who was like leading the market for smartphones in 1998? Nokia in Europe, maybe Motorola in North America. So then, why aren't those companies the ones that brought like the first BlackBerry to the market? And that is the first BlackBerry. Doesn't look like that today anymore, but we know what it looks like today. And a similar question, I think that was in 2001, even though it doesn't show. I told you the important part was on the right. Yes, but who was leading the market for personal music players? Sony. Yeah. So if it was Sony, then how does it come that it was another company that was actually not doing too well just before that brought the iPod to the market? Who was the country that was known for its stunning skylines, like from World War II until, say, 20 years ago? I think it is, yeah. So why is it then that, the Shanghai or Dubai or a number of other stunning skylines are not located on U.S. coasts? Yes, they're just elsewhere. It's getting better, isn't it? I'm just worried. I didn't do anything. That's okay. I trust you. My computer is Windows 7. Yeah, so. Drew was presenting from an Apple computer, and he had this incredible thing that I'm jealous of, because he was just going like this on his iPad, and the whole stuff was working and whatever. And unfortunately, I don't have that, but it's something to work on for next year. The point is, with my three examples, it's not because you're good in an innovation practice that you will remain good. It's not because it worked yesterday that it will work tomorrow, not even today. And the world around us is changing, yes, but we are innovating in this world. And whilst innovation is the thing that we know that is changing our world, it's bringing us new technologies, lots of things. I like this. The world is also impacting innovation. So there is an interplay between innovation and the world in which innovation is actually operating and functioning. I'm going to have a problem with my presentation. If it stays like that, I think. Let's forget about the right-hand side. Should have brought chocolates. For those that don't know, I come from Belgium, and every year I bring chocolates. And I brought chocolates, but you're just way too many in this room, so my box is not large enough. But tomorrow and the day after, I'll be participating in small meetings here and there, and if you just follow me, then there is a chance that you'll get to have Belgian chocolates, because I have a couple of boxes with me, actually. Okay, thank you for the technology. So let's talk about a couple of the things that are happening and that have been happening in the world around us and that impact innovation. There's a lot of pressure, and actually we just had quite a talk about financial pressure. There is a lot of different pressures. One of them is pressure on services. there is, an expectation that services become better, perfect, everything gets included, and so forth and so forth. Pressure on cost. There's an expectation that everything becomes free. My daughter is 16 and she knows everything is free. And she thinks that's going to continue. This is like quite common for the new generation. There is an expectation that performance is ever increasing. We expect things to happen at the speed of light, like technology problems being solved and things like that. Bandwidth, speed of transmissions, whatever. We also expect things to become simpler and simpler in a more and more complex world. So the expectation of the people is that complexity goes down, interfaces become simpler, but we live actually in a world where complexity is just, augmenting. And of course, there's an expectation that quality is ever increasing. And quality is not anymore what quality was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I remember when they invented ISO 9000 something, then quality was fitness for purpose. Yes. Today, quality has become much more. Today, in the perception of quality, there is a perception of sustainability, a perception of social responsibility, and so forth. Yes. All that got basically rolled into the perception of quality. A number of things are going to zero, and a number of things are going to infinite. Processor speed, I mentioned speed already. Bandwidth, those are typically things that are going to infinite. Cost of storage is going to zero. It's actually true, I guess, because 20 years ago, I spent a fortune for a 40 megabyte disk, and that was a lot, yes. And now in my pocket, I could have a terabyte, and it costs not much anymore. So I think it's actually pretty true. Access is going to infinite, yes. 20 years ago, you need to find a phone line and things like that. Now, with Wi-Fi, we have 3G, we're always on, always connected. And the cost of access is going down. I don't know, but if I look at my phone bill and other things, whilst my international roaming is going up, the actual cost of access is going down. The price of energy was actually also mentioned in the presentation just before me, is going up. And we've been talking about that recently in Europe. I mean, the liter of fuel will soon cost €2. That sounds like $10 a gallon, I believe. And then it will cost 3, and then it will cost 4. And the price of other energy is actually also going to go up because, we're consuming faster and more energy than we can ramp up our production of energy. But there is an expectation from the public that our energy consumption in the things we use is actually going down, which, by the way, is true. A computer today uses a lot less energy than it did 10 years ago. But there's an expectation that this is slowly going to zero, and that the environmental footprint of our product is also going to zero. So there's quite some contradictory expectations, and they are putting pressure on the world, the market, and they're putting pressure on our innovation. This pressure is, by the way, good. It's because we have this pressure that we are kind of called on innovation, that we have a motivation to innovate. The other thing that's been changing in innovation, and you all know that I'm sure, is it's moved from product, which was the main focus of innovation until not that long ago. And actually, we all have examples of beautiful product innovation. I'm sure it's moved from product to process, moved from process to business model innovation. And as a consultant, I can see that a lot of the companies that are talking to me today are mostly talking about or looking for help in business model innovation more than anything else. it's moving from business model innovation to market. And maybe it will move from, inventing new markets into something I don't know yet. It's also moving from being something closed and protective into something open. Yes. Not that long ago, a generation ago, 99% of the companies were in the red square down there. That was protected traditional research and development. And I still walk into manufacturing companies that are there. But where you want to be now is into true open innovation. Yes. You want to be in an environment where you work with your clients in co-creation with your competitors, in cooperation, or something like that. Yes, where you can do crowdsourcing, yes, all those types of things. Because you're calling on a much larger potential for innovation if you do so. But opening up from being a closed environment into trusting the outside world, including your ideas to the outside world, it's not been easy for many, many companies. So this openness, I think, is a very important element. If we can say a few words about that. The traditional innovation cycle is like, hey, I have a great idea. I'll turn the idea into a design. If the design works out, then I'll develop it. And if I'm lucky, I can launch a product which is going to be a success on the market or not. And if it is, it will need improvement anyway, so the ideation to design to whatever innovation cycle can start again. Openness in that environment, yes, means crowdsourcing, co-creation with clients in the design in the ideation phase. Yes, it can mean prototyping, user panels, also co-creation in the design phase, co-production, co-delivery even of services in the development phase. And a massive use of social media, yes, in product launches. We've seen over the last few years, yes, product launches in about any industry where massive media have played a very important role. It's not because you do that you're going to be good at innovating. It's not because you're open to the outside world that you're any better. It's a question of applying this openness to the outside world in a good way. It's about asking yourself the right questions. When you're in ideation, are the things that we're doing now right? Or do we need to move into something else? Are we actually getting things done? Are we doing them the right way? Are we reaping the benefits? And using actually the relationships that we can create, yes, through going to the outside world to get better answers to those questions, yes, and to be able to actually keep on track. It also means moving away from a mostly competitive innovation model to collaborative innovation. Because what I hear very often about open innovation is like, oh yeah, that's crowdsourcing. Yeah? And I put some question out, and many people are going to work on it, yes, and they're all going to come with ideas, yes, and then I'll pick the best idea. That's competitive. And if 1,000 people, no, that's a lot. 100 people in this room, if 100 people, yes, work on something and submit ideas, they are all competing with one another. It's an easy model, but it's a very, very inefficient model. A collaborative innovation model, yes, where I could have 100 people actually working together for me and putting their resources and their capability and whatever together, yes, that would be a much more rich, effective, productive model. But it's much more difficult to achieve. There are initiatives in this area. Yes. There are in certain industries or in value chains around industries, yes, large numbers of companies that are working together, but it is still something that needs a lot of work. Why? Because it needs trust. Competitive models don't need trust. You just all work and I'll pick the best. Yes. But Working together, yes, means trusting each other as to no one's going to steal my IP, yes, no one's going to walk away with the money. I mean, all those types of things. Still, I think that's where we need to go tomorrow, to collaborative innovation models, because there we can really reap the benefit of the potential of everyone. Design thinking, yes, is an important element in how innovation is evolving. In the past, innovation was about solving problems. Actually, some companies, I'm thinking, for example, of Toyota, have that in their definition of innovation. They say innovation starts where there is a problem. But we're moving away from the problem-driven thinking to the more visionary, solution-driven thinking, which is also a more holistic thinking, a more systems type thinking. And that's where, for example, business model innovation fits in. So it's a different paradigm. But it's, of course, a much more difficult way of thinking. It's a very different approach. It takes a different mindset. And so that's another area where we see that the whole mental model of innovation is actually changing. The design focus is also changing. From product, which we knew it was before, to people, which it was recently, to their experience, which is what it's becoming and which is already true in certain companies. And we should not forget, and someone tweeted this afternoon, that technology, good technology, should be invisible. I think it was Oleg, but I'm not sure. We should not forget that, indeed, yes, good technology should be invisible, because it's a principle of innovation that system evolves towards ideality. That means providing function without interface most often. The typical example is a telephone. Long time ago, calling someone was quite an endeavor because you needed a guy behind a switchboard who was going to put the right cables together and so forth. Later on, it became, quite some more simple. The interface became simpler because you had something like that. Yes. Not so long ago, I think I had my first mobile phone 15 years ago. I'm not sure. Yes. We got to mobile phones, and we were not connected to the landline, the wall, and so forth anymore. But really, the ideal is, if I want to talk to someone, I think about someone, and I'm able to talk to him. Yes. That's the ideal. Whether that person is in front of me or whether that person is in Australia, doesn't matter. So what we see is the evolution in many areas, and I could make something similar for television, for other domains. Yes. The evolution in many areas is towards a disappearance of the interface. Yes. Now, the interface is still there, but it's becoming transparent. Yes. It's becoming, and that evolution is there. And me thinking about someone wherever, my sister in Geneva, and being able to talk to her is going to come, yes, without having to take a phone out of my pocket and things like that and whatever. Innovation is sometimes surprising because most of the innovation that we see today is not in one area anymore, but is crossing many different areas. What do this golf ball and the high-speed train have in common? Anyone knows? Yeah, true. And the company that makes these golf balls, I think this one is Titleist, and I'm not sure. Yes, they make them with a particular material and a particular structure to that material, and that is now being used in the French high-speed trains. So this is a collaboration between two companies that you would not think, because of their products, would ever work together. What do you think Kraft cheese and Goodyear tires have in common? The taste. They taste the same. I know. They do taste the same. Yes. Apart from the taste. Both companies share the same problem. They need to be able to cut through this very fuzzy, strange material which sticks to your cutters and things like that. Yes? So they have a cutting problem. Cutting cheese and cutting tires is about the same thing. So they got together and they solved their problem together. Unexpected. What do you think that a truck seat, the thing on the left is a truck seat, doesn't look like that, but it is really from a Volvo truck, yes, and an X-ray scanner, have in common. But how would they ever meet? Quality control. Yes. Volvo trucks had a problem with its seats, which I didn't know before knowing them, are very complicated. They're actually full of controls, wires, sensors of all sorts and whatever. And 1 in 1,000 of those seats had a defect, which they would only discover once they were mounted in the truck and the truck was actually sold and being driven, which is very, very expensive because it means you have to take the truck back in and you have to compensate the company that you sold this truck to for the losses and other things and whatever. But the only way to find actually, to be able to trace that defect before the seat was mounted in the truck was to actually look through it, yes, do image recognition, yes, which is where the X-ray scanner came. So what we're doing here is we're using medical technology in the automotive sector. What do you think Coca-Cola and Heinz have in common? No, not the taste this time. The packaging. They work together, yes, to make a bottle, which they're proud of, by the way, yes, which is 30% based on bio-based products, yes, and which is entirely recyclable. They are not competitors, but they are working in the same field. Yes, and they decided to work together and collaborate together on this. Would probably not have happened, just 10 or 20 years ago. What is remarkable in all those examples is that it requires looking outside of your normal area of competency. It is a requirement to actually look beyond the borders of your company, sometimes beyond the borders of your sector. We use a model here of increasing maturity in innovation. Sometimes it's not even sufficient to look in another sector of industry. Sometimes you need to look into another discipline of science. Yes. And the requirement for that is this openness that I've been talking about before, but also a lot of knowledge that is being shared. We see that knowledge management techniques which were used inside companies in the past are now being used in the space across organizations. And that is just also changing the way that we look at innovation, but it is also creating new opportunities, such as in the 3 or 4 examples that I've given. Something else is changing. The market that we are in is changing. Oh, by the way, the background picture here, for those that didn't see that, those people are what we call garbage pickers. It's not very visible, but it actually is not very visible because they kind of fade into the environment they work in. And there's a beautiful movie, it's called Wasteland, which talks about these garbage pickers, and has a lot of dignity in that. But the point here is that not only is innovation changing in all the ways that I've mentioned, but innovation also has to adapt to a new market. We know that our world population is growing, 6 billion, 7 billion, I guess sometime 8 billion. 9 billion, it says, by 2050. And all of that growth will be in what we call the developing world. It will not be in Europe. It will not be in North America. And that means that the economic growth will also not be in Europe and North America. The economic growth, yes, will be in the developing world, in the developing countries. And those people, for most of you, I guess, are not your current clients. So What it takes is not to look at your customers, which we so often do. Yes? But what it takes is once in a while to look at your non-customers, to look at how you could rethink your products, your services, your business. Yes? Not for your customers of today, but for your customers of tomorrow, which are your non-customers. Because in these countries, and the BRIC countries were mentioned before, yes, but the other countries will follow, including Africa, for those that don't believe it, yes, including all of Latin America. In all these countries, something is growing that didn't exist before. It's a middle class. Not so long ago, I was in India. I think that 20 years ago, there was no middle class in India. There was rich people and poor people. Now there's a middle class which represents 10 to 15% of the population. That doesn't sound much, but 10 to 15% of a billion people is quite a number of people. So that's a market, because those people want to have whatever we have. They want to have iPhones, they want to have, same technology, laptops, gadgets, whatever that we have. So they are a market for us. They are a market for consumer products, they are a market, or they are creating a market for engineering products and other products. We're talking about quite a number of people, and we're talking about changing our mindset from selling to the elite, and how many companies, how many clients do I have that are proud to sell to the Fortune 500 or something like that, yes, to selling to the base of the pyramid. That's not the only shift. There's a couple of other shifts like that. Someone said today, it was in a DAS symposium, that we will stop owning things. I fully agree with that. Yes. Although it's probably very difficult as a concept to tell you that you're not going to have a car anymore. I bought a car just 3 or 4 months ago. It's an Italian car, because I like Italian cars, an Alfa Romeo. And when I bought it very consciously thinking that it was potentially the last car I bought. Yes. Because we're moving from possession to access. Possession of a car, access to transportation. We're moving, as I said before, from paying to free, or at least apparently free, for my daughter, entirely free. Yes. From having and owning to being and using. Yes. We're becoming nomadic again. We've taken thousands of years to move from being nomadic to being sedentary. But we're seeing today that we're becoming nomadic again. Or we're becoming nomadic because we want to, for many of us, or we're becoming nomadic because we have to, for actually many more of us. Yes. In large parts of the developing world, and in large parts of Europe, and I guess probably North America, yes, people are moving for economic reasons. Yes. And so forth and so on. Those are all shifts in society. Those are all shifts around us, yes, which have been impacted by our revolution, meaning by innovation, but which are now impacting innovation. I was at a conference a couple of months ago where the Dutch chemical industry was represented by DSM. DSM is a Dutch company in the chemical and now moving into the biochemical industry. And their CEO said, business cannot survive in a society that fails. So if we want to survive, we have to be careful in the way we deal with our resources. And we have to be careful in the way we deal with society. And for that reason, I think that from here on, it doesn't make any sense to talk about social innovation, social entrepreneurship, all those types of things. By definition, I think that all innovation, yes, has to be social. And all innovation has to include sustainability. And I was in Geneva last week, just 10 days ago, I think, talking at the Geneva Forum on Social Change. And I was in a panel on corporate social responsibility. And if you look at innovation, CSR cannot be an afterthought. It's not about, oh, I've developed this beautiful new product or service, And, well, yeah, now maybe I should think about, what it means to the environment or to the society or to whatever. No. Those thoughts have to be taken all at the beginning of the process. They have to be embedded in the innovation process. Otherwise, it won't work. So these are thoughts that need to be at the outset of the process. And I talked about energy. Yes, we're going to lack energy. Yes. We're going to lack precious metals. Yes. We're going to lack water. Yes. There's been wars over many things. There's wars over energy currently ongoing in the world. There's going to be wars over water for sure. Yes. And if we don't deal with these things in the way we innovate, yes, it's just going to get worse. I hear ever so often that, we're finally and slowly getting out of the crisis, meaning the financial crisis. But it seems obvious to me that the crisis, and we could say therefore the opportunity, it seems obvious to me that the crisis is the thing that's ahead of us. We are not getting out of the crisis. We'll have to deal with the crisis when it's going to come, and it is coming. Thank you. Joel said he didn't want to listen to me because he had heard this before. No, I think he had something else to do. And he said I had to deal myself with questions. And I have, 15 minutes left for questions or something like that. So, anyone challenging my views? Any questions, comments, disagreements, revolutionary thoughts? Yeah. Do we have micros?
Wonderful presentation. How do you promote innovation in the academic environment? How do you drive that into our academic institutions, so specifically the schools of engineering?
I don't know. I mean, they're not my clients, so the honest answer is I don't know. But I do work in projects where government, academics, private research institutions, and businesses are all involved. And what I can say is that, especially in Europe, I mean, I do 80% of my business in Europe. So I can more easily talk about the situation in Europe. What I can say is that I hoped and I expected that the academic world would grow closer and closer to the business, and would become more and more dynamic, and would also become more risk-taking. And what I actually see is the reverse. What I see is, because academics are measured on the wrong things, which is how many papers they write and get published, that instills the wrong behavior. And it is, it proves actually to be very difficult. I agree to work with academics. And I think that as we innovate a lot, we should also innovate education, and we should also innovate our higher education system. And we should also innovate, actually, our research institutions, our public research institutions, because they are all working in a model which is, pretty old. I guess several generations old, and which has not been updated. I see there's several questions over there.
Chris, you talk a lot about the idea of collaboration and collaboration even among competitors. But many mature markets are kind of locked into this, entrenched competition. I mean, you look at, Coke and Pepsi, Walmart, Target. They're sort of locked into this zero-sum kind of mentality. How do you start getting them to innovate towards some of our goals in social innovation, sustainable innovation, and break that sort of zero-sum mentality?
I don't think I could easily get Coke and Pepsi to work together. It would be a nice challenge. But a lot of this collaborative innovation I can see and I can make happen in the value chain, meaning Coke with its suppliers and its clients, Pepsi could do that with its suppliers and its clients. And I can also see it happening in between companies which are in the same industry or in the same market, but which are not necessarily head-on. And actually, the example of Coca-Cola and Heinz is a good example of that. I also think, and I don't want to start a row about Coca-Cola and Pepsi here, but it would be actually a very good example to say something about that. Pepsi, I forgot the name of their campaign, but they had this campaign last year where you could, submit projects, and they would actually distribute money for projects and things like that and so forth. As a high visibility thing, it's part of their CSR effort. In my opinion, it's not CSR because it's not changing anything fundamentally, even though, of course, I'm lucky for all those projects that got money from them. What Coca-Cola is doing is they are changing their packaging. They are changing the way they deal with water. They use many, many times more water than what's in the bottle. Yes. To put 1 liter of Coke in a bottle, they need a lot of water. That's never going to get into that bottle. There are factories in China which are along, I forgot the name of the river, which is a river which is going to run dry in a couple of years because simply we're taking more and more water out of that river. They have re-engineered their factories to actually use 30% or something like that less water than what they did in the past. Yes. To me, that is really social responsibility. Yeah.
Hi, Chris. I think the question before mine and the example of Pepsi and Coca-Cola being one extreme.
You don't work for Pepsi, do you?
No.
No, okay.
And the other extreme being this, the much easier proposition to Pepsi and a Heinz, right? But I'm gonna just kind of turn the question in this kind of gray area. I'm a gray area kind of guy, and. If you start thinking more of the problem of the people who like drinks, right, and they like Pepsi and they like wine, right? So you could make an argument that that is a very Pepsi and Coke because the more Coke you drink, the less wine you drink. If you sell the drink, or you can make the argument that people are going to drink what they want to drink, and let's just embrace it. And how do you make those companies to work together? And it's kind of a little bit more related to this industry, maybe.
Okay. Well, the first thing I would like to say is that the social behavior of companies is something that is becoming a buying argument more and more. Yes?
It's becoming what?
It's becoming a buying argument for clients, for their clients, more and more. I mean, if it wasn't true, then organic wines wouldn't sell. Then actually there's organic Coke. It's called Ubuntu Coke. Yes. I don't know if it's available here, but I've had it once already. Wouldn't sell. So I think that there is an understanding with a lot of companies, and actually with some of the very large companies, that they need to get this right, and they need to innovate for sustainability because it is part of their image. And if they get their image right, then they will actually reach the clients that they want to reach or that they need to reach. So I think that this is slowly growing, and I think it will actually continue to grow. I'm not sure that actually answers your question.
No, my question was more about that when from a company point of view, might be perceived that some other company is a competitor. But in reality, it's more of like, they are complementary because in the case of, the example I put of Coca-Cola and wine are that consumer is going to choose to drink one or the other independently or then collaborate or not, right?
True, but they may actually choose to drink both. But
yeah, that's the point.
But I don't know what to say. Yeah, you're right, but. Yeah.
We had a question over here.
Oh, okay.
Hi. I guess the first question has to do with your involvement with sustainability. That's my area of interest. Europe has historically been viewed as ahead of the U.S. in many ways in having sustainability drive innovation. So my question first is, to what extent do you see sustainability driving innovation, especially in the product development world? Secondly, in this notion of open innovation, IP protection, IP theft, once you start looking globally, is an issue. How do you address that? So there's really two very different questions. But.
Yeah, I think I did participate in part of the symposium this morning. And one of my comments, which I actually tweeted, was that I think that the way we have dealt up to now with sustainability in Europe and North America is very, very, very different. In Europe, I think it's been driven by government, by regulations at the European level, which had to be translated by local European, national European governments. That has been forcing sustainability, or at least sustainability thinking, onto a number of companies. And I think that because of that, for many of those companies, sustainability is an afterthought for compliance. So the perception that we are ahead of North America in Europe is probably a false perception. Because whilst I think things have picked up much slower in North America, I think the whole sustainability drive in North America is actually coming from the private sector. It's not coming from government. And I think that therefore it may well be much stronger. And the education that many companies in Europe need is that this sustainable thinking has to be at the outset of their design process and has not to come as an afterthought. And I think that is, ultimately over the long term, I think things will level out. But that is certainly today, I think, a very important difference that there is. On the open innovation, yes, it is an issue. I mean, of course. I mean, if I have a good idea and you have a good idea, and we put our ideas together and we get to an even better idea, then it's ours. It's not mine anymore. It's not yours anymore. It's ours. And if you run away with it, I'm going to be angry at you. What it means is that yes, we have to favor openness. Yes, we have to favor a lot of the networking around that. We have to favor collaborative environments. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to put the legal environment in place, the protections and so forth, to be able to work in that environment. And I think that that is where there is a huge lack today. I think that the copyright law, as we know it, will fail. I think it's actually failing. I think that intellectual property protection, I mean patents, will fail. And it will be renewed, and there is actually a lot of talk about that. And that talk involves large companies like Google, IBM, others, to rethink patent law. And unfortunately, as always, I think law will, come after the changes that we see happening in reality. So there will be difficult situations, difficult cases. They will lead to jurisprudence, and they will lead to changes in our practices. But it is true, and it is an issue, and it is actually the top issue in most of the work that I do. One of my projects, which is funded by the European Commission, is to create a collaborative environment for 250 small companies in the bio-based product sector. So they are companies in the chemical industry that work from biomass and those types of things. And the challenge is not the technology environment. The challenge is the trust. The challenge is convincing those companies, which must, by the way, share, because they are, each and any of them is too small. They're small companies. Each and any of them is too small to products to market on a scale that a Procter & Gamble or a similar company would be able to do it. They can do small productions, they can't ramp them up. They need each other to work together, but they can't trust each other. And so a lot of what we work, I would say that currently more than half of our effort is actually going into creating a trust environment much more than into the technology. So it is an issue. I think it's well recognized by many people. I think it's being worked on, but I think it's a slow process before we will get there. I'm just taking questions. I don't know how many time we have.
The focus on the engineering software market, currently it's dominated by 2 or 3 big players, Dassault and Siemens and maybe Autodesk or PTC. How fast do you see the engineering software market moving to an open community, open source collaboration kind of model? And what are the big vendors going to do? Where is their role in that whole scenario?
Okay. So I'm probably a strange beast in this conference because I'm not from the engineering software community. And my clients are not typically in that community either. But we've seen open software and open source come to every single application, from scientific to word processors to whatever, to publishing to whatever. So it will come to this market. It will. It's just that I don't know when, and the large players won't like it, and they will adapt. That's it? You had a question? No? Can we have a micro for Jack?
One way to look at this open innovation is that it's a barter economy where people get together and trade ideas without allowing the man to monetize them. And musicians have been doing this for a number of years quite nicely, except the ones that allowed the man to monetize them, ASCAP, etc., and the whole record and music industry took all the money and left the performers, right? And along came iPod, right? And it's completely changed the economics. The money now goes to the performer, some of it to Steve Jobs, and the music business per se is, the middleman is cut out. So I wonder why this doesn't happen in the design profession. The designers getting together and a barter economy, putting something of value out in the marketplace where it can be monetized, but they have the access to the income, not the man.
I don't know. What I do know is that the design world is very much under pressure in this new open innovation world. If you visit sites like 99 Designs, for example, that is not technology design, by the way, but I think the same story would hold. This is hated by the traditional design companies, but is of course loved by the independent designers because it creates indeed a marketplace that they didn't have before. What you see, I think, is that there is not a single movement in any of these things. There are many movements. One of the movements, because you were mentioning that, is actually alternate currency. A lot of things in innovation are happening today with alternate currencies, and including with very large companies, by the way. One of the projects I've been involved in recently is an open infrastructure project. The idea of open infrastructure is that very large companies have very expensive infrastructure, which they don't use full time, and very small companies cannot afford that type of infrastructure, and they could not even afford renting it out. Yes. But they could create a space where they become members, where they create an alternate currency. Everyone gets tokens, and they can exchange that, and it works. And so, especially with all the pressure that there is on the financial system, the question of alternate currencies is a question that comes up very regularly. That is one thing where things are moving. There is in the design world there are a lot of new places where designers get together, and it is changing the way they are actually working together and the way they are actually competing against each other. So I think that changes are coming. I think that part of what is actually happening in innovation is indeed bartering. But it is bartering in a very different context than, if I give you a glass of something and you give me something else in return. Because it is bartering where if I give you an idea and you give me an idea, we both have two. So that's quite a different model and quite a different concept. It says down here that we ran over time. So I guess we should stop questions now. Thank you and discussion. Thank you for your attention. And the important thing is you are awaited in whatever pool, whatever it's called, the cabana or something like that. There's a pool over there, yes, and there's drinks, food, and all those type of things. And that's, I think, where we should go now. Thank you very much.